You're alive now, but I'm not.
What?
Just only you. I'm the non-live.
Why are you not live?
No, we're both live.
Oh, good.
Oh, good.
Good.
So what are you saying to it then?
Well, the answer is no.
The answer's no. Do you think, like, I mean,
So,
we kind of came to come to that conclusion from last time when we were having that discussion last night that
yeah.
there seems to be a lack of moral incentive from at least for most people.
Yeah.
And like following on,
Well,
like, because obviously
yeah, when it's hard.
I was trying to say that I think the basis of where like morality comes from, which was last night's question, was thought, was like rational thought and reasoning basically, and it is a gift that's bestowed to us uniquely, unlike the animals who just act on their programming and act amorally, like they act
Yeah.
without thought. It's not that they act like they don't act deliberately immorally because they need to have some moral compass to do that. In fact, it seems it's only humans that can
Yeah.
act immorally because they can know what's good and bad and still choose to do bad, right? But the animals
Yeah.
obviously they act without even the kind of consideration of what's morally good or bad. They just do what they're programmed to do instead. So I do think it's thought. It's thought that allows like moral consideration, and
Yeah.
if that's the case, then well, we need to all be thinking a lot more. But if people don't think, they don't use rational thought, which they're not being conditioned to do, they're not being trained to think for themselves. They're being deliberately trained to not think for themselves, really, to kind of still just carry out their programming. And their sort of set programming has just been switched to from what nature demands of a man to what man demands of man, I would say.
Yeah.
And we've kind of touched on it before
I
where
would
we're saying,
agree.
well, it would seem logical and obvious that man would have strived to overthrow nature as the kind of like the main enemy, the main hurdle that you've had to overcome. So like getting shelter, getting resources, that sort of thing. That would be the main thing to overthrow, and it
Yeah.
would be the idea that once we overthrow this, well, then man can take the place of nature, and we can do things that are good for men. But that didn't take into account
Yeah.
that that men might not always do what's right for men, and in fact, it seems to me anyway that the cases they don't, and it's actually worse than when nature was in charge, if you will.
Yeah. Well,
What
it's
do you
quite
think?
interesting that we were trying to get away from. Well, obviously nature is like hard, but like especially in countries outside of Scotland where it's like more harsh, and there's natural disasters that are wiping out lots of people. It's funny that humans have managed to replace that, and we still are able to wipe out people, even though. Well, no, I suppose that was happening while nature was there as well. Actually,
Well, nature was the decider of who would continue and who would not, essentially. Because obviously
yeah,
genes are selected through evolution, and genes are selected for their ability to survive. So that would have been the decision made by nature, if you will. I mean, it doesn't do this with a conscience, of course, but essentially it almost chooses what to go forward based on what does perform as well, isn't it, within the gene pool. Whereas now it
yeah,
seems that the decision as to what goes forward is being decided by man rather than nature, and we obviously put a stop to many of the ways in which nature would have selected evolution would have selected people.
and so we're left with a big problem of too many people. Then, do you think?
Well, the populations grow. We have many, many people, and the people who are being selected are certainly not being selected on obvious strengths as before, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I mean, they've been selected more for how docile they are. Like that's who's going to like slot in well, perform well in society now, isn't it? If you're kind of able just to accept and able just to do what you're told and be happy with that, you have a much better chance, really, of fitting in and getting the kind of rewards and benefits that society's laying out for you, aren't you?
You are, yeah, but I mean, in terms of life or death, we don't well, in most Britain, we don't kill anyone. Um, as a um, as like a control brain, like the way that nature did. We don't do that at all, so we're left with everyone now.
Right. Well, there isn't natural
It's,
selection taking place anymore from the course of nature. That is
yeah,
right, and there's no critical repercussions to actions. There's no critical repercussion to non-conformity to reality. None of this is going to make it so that you die. At least maybe it can affect how you feel and how you perceive things, and your sort of status will all be affected by this. By your beliefs and how what your perspective is. Of course, that's going to affect how you perform in the world, but you're certainly not going to die
I mean,
because of any like lack of understanding. Any ignorance is not going to cause your death as it would have before.
yeah, exactly, and I mean, obviously, there's still like accidents and people killing people and stuff. But it's just obviously like quite a small amount, and um, oh, damn, what was I going to say? Oh, fuck's sake. Sorry, I was just letting talking. Something about right. Oh yeah, your worst case scenario is prison basically, which isn't really that terrible.
Not here, not
Compared,
particularly here, obviously. Yeah.
yeah, obviously that does differ. And it is bad. But I mean here, yeah, it's not like it's just not terrible. It obviously doesn't frighten people enough to like it doesn't act as a deterrent going to prison.
No, I mean obviously people you see many repeat offenders. In a lot of cases, it removes the stress, the worry of earning bills, paying rent, having to socialize, communicate to get that done, have a standing, all these things that normal people have to go through. Well, prison is going to alleviate that to some sense as well. When you're getting fed, you're getting sheltered, you're getting a number of things as well.
Yeah,
But I
exactly.
think I'm just going to change the question back. What do you think? Because we're not getting any like people coming in the chat at all.
Yeah, if you want.
Well, just because I've got quite a good response, and even if that means it just to start it off, and then we can kind of switch, go from there. What do you think?
It's only been 8 minutes though, but yeah.
Yeah, but quite quickly we were getting response on that one. I know it could just be another quiet night again, I suppose, but.
Yeah, no coincidence.
Well, the thing is, we can just talk about what we want to talk about right now anyway until someone's there, so
Yeah.
it's not their problem, is it? So.
Yeah. So I can't remember what we were talking about.
Well, in general, talking about where does morality come from, but then obviously we're having a discussion on science is maybe not adequate for providing a moral framework for people, especially just like most people we're talking about. We're not saying that someone who is scientific and say not religious can't understand they should do good and do good and be a good person, but
Yeah.
that might not be the average person. And I think what we kind of concluded last time was that religion did a good job for most people, or as many people as it could, of giving them a
Yeah.
reason to behave good, basically, since they are not going to achieve that through their own thought.
But do you think then, if the majority of people don't understand or think, then are they actually acting amorally?
Well, the thing is, I think the difference between what I seem to learn, like just from observing it more and more, is the difference between an animal and a human. Is that when an animal behaves amorally, it really doesn't. It could behave good or bad, and it would be almost just coincidental which one it would do. It just really is only acting on its instinct to survive and gather resources. That's what it's essentially doing. And human beings essentially do the same, I think, except they have this extra capacity for behaving poorly, like evilly, and their ignorance of what's good and bad seems to lead them to be bad. Ignorance seems to equal, in my opinion, evil.
Yes, but do you think that then comes under amoral?
Yes, because I think they can behave amorally and the outcome can be immoral. I think that's a fair distinction to make.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of actually a discussion I had with Lewis, who was saying that businesses behave amorally, and I agree with that. But I think that can mean the outcome can still be immoral. From it can be either way. But of course, it's just coincidence which way it goes if they're behaving amorally. But it could be either.
Yeah, but I mean, I think some businesses will, or at least whoever's making the decisions, like, I think some people will be aware of, for example, it's illegal to have illegal immigrants working so that you have to pay them, so you can pay them less. But I think they'd be aware of that, but still to be at the top and compete with other people, they make that decision to get cheaper labour in and do that illegally.
Perhaps aware, yeah, I see what you're saying, but the main reason they make the decision is to make more money. That's what they're just concerned with. That's what they're like rooted towards as a business. So that's the sense we're saying they're amoral, in the sense that
Mm.
it's coincidence whether or not the actions that they provide could be good or bad. They might do good things, but that's only because they know by doing those good things they'll make more money because they'll have a better public image, and therefore get more sales and more notoriety and etc. etc. So they're not really doing it for the good of say the planet or the good of something, some cause. They're doing it to get more money. And whether or not that means they do good things, because they can still do good things whilst trying to get more money, it's just coincidence or just doesn't really matter. Just that'll be whatever it will be, but they'll just focus on how to get more profits.
But is it not immoral to know that you're going to make things worse, even if your goal is money?
Yeah, well, the outcome I think is immoral, but I don't. It depends. Because you're saying no, a business isn't one entity, so it's a completely different question than say just a person. Is a person amoral and can they be immoral? A business is a collection of many people, so it's a bit trickier to really understand it, I suppose, isn't it?
Well, I'm taking it as if we're speaking about the lead person of the business who's making this decision.
Hmm. Well, yeah,
And if
it's implied, I suppose, by the sense that if they are aware of what's good and bad, then yes, they're just behaving immorally rather than amorally. Yes,
yeah, yeah, okay.
correct. But that's again an individual, so that's a lot easier to answer there. And it's just implied by their knowledge of what's good and bad. That's the difference between the two. Like as we said, animals are amoral because they don't have a concept of good and bad. So you can't say they can behave morally or immoral. They don't have that moral agency. They do as they do. They do as they're programmed to do.
But our business is not really. I mean, I don't know, but I would assume that like big decisions would come down to someone at the top who has the sort of last say.
I guess it depends. It just depends. It can be a board of people. It could be a director. It could be different ways. It could be a small family business. It could be a huge business where they've got a whole board of people making decisions.
Okay, but so then if it is a whole board of people, can they not make an immoral decision together?
Yeah, if you're saying they have knowledge of what's good and bad, then I suppose yes.
Yeah.
Like if you because in your question you've said that they know it's a bad thing, or it seems to be you're implying that. So yes, I'd say that very much says that they have to be behaving immorally. The whole point
Yeah.
it's all about whether or not they're ignorant of what's good and bad. Most
Mhm.
people are actually ignorant of good and evil. They're just told what's good or bad, and then they act based on that. So you more or less can see that similar to an animal, how the animal behaves amorally. I would say that's quite similar for most people as well. They're just
It
going by
does
their
seem to.
programming, and their programming involves listening to what the authority tells them is good or bad.
Yeah,
Do you know what I'm
and that
saying?
just so happens to sometimes be actually good things.
Yeah, it
Or
doesn't mean it can't be good exactly. Just because you have like submitted yourself to authority and you don't think about good and bad, it doesn't necessarily mean you come out with doing always bad things. But it does mean you essentially roll the dice enough number of times. Well, you're going to perform bad actions. I think if you don't have some kind of guidance, some kind of conscience that's thinking about it and then deciding for yourself if you should take the action or not. It just makes sense with all the hundreds of things that human beings are going to do in their lifetime. There's no way you just keep rolling the dice and they're all going to be good when it's essentially random for them.
So how do you think that works for punishment then?
For punishment.
If someone acts amorally, does that work?
Well, people wouldn't consider that they do typically. That's the difference between my perspective and theirs, perhaps. But um, obviously, people wouldn't be considered to be able to act amorally unless they're a very young child or they've got a mental disability, and that's when obviously these court cases get very complicated. And they have to try and
Mm-hmm.
decide did the person have moral agency? That's always a really highly intense kind of battle that gets like kind of played out there. If you've ever seen any of those cases where like they try to plead insanity or try to plead that they didn't really know
Yeah.
it was bad, sort of thing. So that's the only case in which there can be differences in the punishment. But aside from that,
So
it's
then,
assumed that most adults do have moral agency and do know what is good and bad.
so if you were in control, and you were to decide, since you say that most people are amoral, then what would your punishment be for, let's say, murder or something?
Well, I don't think the fact that something acts amorally necessarily means you cannot punish it. For example, in society, people tend to agree that we put down dogs when they bite someone. If they're like a vicious animal or a vicious dog, if they like bite people, then we put it down. That doesn't mean the dog, necessarily acted immorally because it didn't think about it in a moral sense. It just acted as a dog acts. If you see what I mean. So it doesn't remove the
Okay, yeah.
possibility of punishment.
So you would put them down then,
Well, depending on what they've done, yeah.
if they've killed someone.
Depending on the circumstances of why and how and etc.
Yeah,
etc.
okay, right. So it's not in self-defense. It's just a random stabbing on the street.
Yeah, probably have to do that then. Yeah, just like I would.
Yeah.
You put on the dog that if it's a danger and it's something we can't fix, then what other choice do you have, really?
So do you think rehabilitation is possible for some people? Or something like, let me just think to give you a bit more. Let me think. This is quite a tough one. For a rapist, right? So this person has raped a woman after a night out or something. It's one case of that. They go to prison. I think they can be rehabilitated. I know that's not information, but just and again, not just this particular person, but like, let's say there's 1,000 of those examples.
Okay.
Could any be rehabilitated?
Um,
I can't really like say yes, definitely.
my default like feeling towards that, my default position on that answer as a general answer is we can't take the risk. How can you morally take the risk with someone who's proven they will do something that corrupts the soul, proven they'll do something entirely evil? Then how can you say, how can it be, when their second victim then gets attacked, how is it when you said I'm willing to take that risk? Like how can we be the ones to say that when it's not us that suffers? It's very easy to say things that sound good when you're not the one suffering it. That's my opinion.
Well, that's the thing, because I would never want to make that judgment, and I think this is why a lot of like people like pedos or whatever who are in these kind of mental hospitals, they don't get let out because who wants to sign off saying, "Yep, they're ready to go."
Well, who
Not
can?
me,
Yeah,
anyway.
who can take that like moral responsibility? Yeah, with the knowledge that it could well happen again. It's very, very possible because you have someone that
And it
has
is your
already
fault
crossed
if
that line.
happens
So,
again. Because I think at that
yeah,
point it's not that person's. Well, I'm not saying it's not their fault that they raped again, but like it's more of your responsibility because we had them behind bars, and then you said, "Nah, let's set them free." So I think it's actually on you if it happens.
well, at least you'd have to say
What do you?
it's in part, but this again might be this kind of diffusion of responsibility where, say, if you were, again, if we go back and say you were the leader of a tribe and you have someone that's rape someone inside your tribe, then
Yeah.
would you make that decision as a leader when it was all on you and you're the one that's going to be looked at to decide what happens with them, and if you let them, if you release them or let them just stay around, it's your responsibility. Do you think as many people would say, yes, I would release them to that, as when they're working as part of a team or they're sort of in the government or they're, you know what I mean? There's a lot less responsibility right on their shoulders. So I think it
It
might be
is, yeah.
in part that diffusion of responsibility as well, and diffusion of moral responsibility for that situation.
Yeah, it is. I think that's totally what's happening because
Mm.
um you like even if it's well, it's kind of anything that you would like hear about in the news. If it's something like anyone's made a mistake who's in a job, you'll maybe hear about it, but oh, they got let go or maybe fired or maybe not. But no one knows who they are. Like no one actually knows if that happened. No one knows if they got taken back on. Like it's just oh yeah, someone oh who the fuck did that, and then oh
Well,
there's not
it's
much
the
to
same
do
point
with
as
it.
well. Like you see this in the documentary with Louis Theroux on paedophiles, and
Mhm.
apparently, according to the doctor, the general consensus in the public is that they're kind of like okay for them to be rehabilitated and sort of brought back into the community, just not on their street. And that speaks volumes for my like what I believe on this point is that people are fine with all these things. They can take a moral high ground and sort of satisfy their um,
Yeah, they
craving to
would
seem
kill another
morally
person.
superior and all this, but not when it would actually affect them. Then all of a sudden it's oh no, I'm not sure. So we're dealing with moral snakes, moral people who want to appear good but don't actually want to do what's good.
Exactly, and the thing is, so that ends up it just being that they don't tell us where they put them.
Right.
So there's just areas where there's fucking hundreds of sex offenders. I mean, what the hell is that all about?
Mm-hmm.
Like, 'cause remember I was saying to you, the place in Cumbernauld has got apparently, um, like loads of them in this one area. Someone who I was working with was telling me who lives there,
Mm.
or her sister lives there, I think, and it's where she grew up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm just like, what? Like, how is that acceptable? It's just what?
Yeah.
I can't get my
Um.
head around how they're allowed to be out.
Yeah.
And this is
I'm.
paedophiles as well. This
mm.
like, do you know what I mean? It's like, what the
I
heck?
still haven't been able to be convinced of the feeling, the understanding that they should die, hasn't been able to be argued against enough for me. No one's brought that position with any good argumentation to say why they shouldn't be dead or at least exiled. Because doing the reduction down to kind of again where if you were the leader and you had this tribe, it's very plain that you would choose one of those things to happen. Or to me it is. To
Yeah,
me it's very obvious, and it would be absolutely bizarre, and it would never come to your mind to say, "Oh, I don't know, let's like keep them in a sheltered bit and feed them, and we'll bring them the food, and we all have to bring some of our productivity and like give it to them," because that is what's happening.
even on
It's
the
just
like
so
rough
anonymous. It's
like
just money,
harvests and stuff
so
like
it's all
that.
like funding. It's not direct. Like how if you had to bring the plate of food up to them and feed them and clothe them and give them drinks of water and all this. Yeah, I
Yeah, give them their
think
human rights. Yeah,
yeah, I think
okay.
I think we would see a different story from most people if that was the case. It's so you go out there all day in labour and hunt and chop wood and gather food and all this, only to come back and give like 5% of it to this guy who's sitting in there, and he never has to do any of it. Clearly, that isn't just, is it?
No, not at all.
No, it makes no sense, and to me it sounds bizarre. Actually, it's just ludicrous to me when you put it in those terms, and I don't see how that can be
Yeah,
any different than what we're doing now. It's just that it's not your resources, it's not you that has to go give it to them, it's not your neighborhood, etc., etc., etc. So people, it's too
it's too
difficult for them to
abstract.
imagine this because everything's so large on such an abstract scale, and so like, it's money and it's all over the place and it's funding and it's huge. It's just too hard for people to imagine it and bring it back down to, well, what would you do if it was smaller, and then extrapolate that out, sort of thing.
Yeah, but apparently that's just two different things. Even
Apparently,
though
but how is it
society,
exactly? I wonder how can you make an argument that's any different, because it's the exact same case.
it is the exact same
And as I
case.
said,
Yeah.
you just said the same thing. So you ask someone like this, oh, so you'd be happy for them to be on your street. And most would probably then switch to no, and even the ones that want to stick with yes are lying. So you either have a
Of
deceitful
course
liar
they
that you're
are.
speaking to, or you have someone that then realizes that they're wrong. That's the only two outcomes you
Or
can have on that question, I think.
or if they're that fucked in the head that like that is kind of true to them, that they're fine with them being on their street, then
Well, then they're
I
mentally
think.
ill, and that's quite a common occurrence too. I mean,
Well,
the,
yeah, but I'm saying those people need to not be allowed to have to really be there because, like, if you, especially if you're a parent, you can't be like, yeah, like I'm a parent, but I'll have sex offenders on my street. Like, no,
well, then
give me your
you're failing. Yeah, you've just failed to complete your duty to protect. Yeah, and to care for the
yeah, because
protection of children, which
apparently everyone's equal
moral
and
beings care for the protection of children. So
what?
moral beings simply care for the protection of children and making sure children are safe. That is a moral responsibility of an adult.
Yeah, exactly. And
That should be obvious,
uh,
but clearly it's not. So I'm just saying it, just saying it again. But
well, it just seems that these people are more concerned with again looking good, this whole virtue thing. But I mean,
mm,
to put your kids as equal to strangers is fucking crazy.
correct, yes.
That's what you're doing though, if you're saying that, isn't it?
Well,
That's of equal.
the pathology of chasing the high of being virtuous clearly serves to override logical and rational thinking.
I like that sentence. That was good.
That's how I see it. I just think that it can do that to such an extent we almost can't even believe it, but we have to believe it because this is what we're facing. We're facing people who are addicted to doing that, to getting their hit of seeming good.
Yeah.
And it's a quick,
And
easy
do you
way
think?
to get it too. You just say something that makes you sound tolerant or makes you sound like you're compassionate, empathetic, use these kind of buzzwords, and then there you go. You look like the good person, you come off good, everyone likes you, and you get your hit of being like, yeah, I actually can understand this. I appreciate it. So yeah, it's a dangerous situation, and it seems to be fairly prevalent. Yeah.
Hmm.
But it ties into the fact the emotion itself, and basically, I think the hit that people are getting off virtue signaling, if that's the term, is very similar to they're getting a hit of dopamine or whatever chemical it is in the brain. Well, that's similar to the kind of chemical reactions you get with emotions. So if you're angry or sad or happy, certain chemicals are released in your system. So it's very, very much
Hmm.
similar, and I would say the emotions and the chemicals that are released are the antithesis to reasonable thought and logical thought.
Do you think then that this virtue signaling
Mm-hmm.
um well, I would say it's become worse with the internet. But do you think that's really like where it started to like go out of control? Because at the moment it seems out of control.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I don't really know what it was like before the internet because I was too young to know before that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if this is all. I'm sure there will always have been people that do this, but do you think it is actually the internet that's like really, really made it go insane, or do you think it was kind of always and then that's just put it up a bit?
That's a good question because I think the internet does certainly, well, it obviously allows you to see more people and see how more people are acting. And that maybe does
Yeah.
develop this kind of sense of one-upmanship where you have to outdo the other person and seem better than them. It's it's no secret that if you go on Facebook, you get all sorts of people like posting these types of messages that are just when you break them down and when you understand what they're doing, it's very obvious that they're just trying to appear like the greatest thing ever and sniff their own arse,
Or even
but
use it
disguised
like
as though they're like helping. Sorry.
sorry, I was just saying, and also like this isn't virtue signaling, but I think it's in the same category of fucked upness. Um, like the attention seekingness. So like people who write about whoever's died all over Facebook, and like that to
Right.
me just reeks of like fuck off. Like it's just so horrible, and
Yeah.
I swear to God, if I know anyone, I don't know anyone that would do this, but if I die and anyone fucking put that up, maybe I did, but they can go fuck themselves. I do not want to be written about so that you can get fucking brownie points on things.
Yeah, that is.
What
That's
an
quite.
absolute like horrible
It's
thing
quite
to
sickening.
make.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah,
if it's done that
it's
way.
horrible.
Welcome to the chat, dude, who says hi, guys, and there's a little like woman waving there as well. I think. It's good to see you, my friend. Hope you're doing well this evening. We've kind of changed the question back to the same main question, just because it seemed fairly popular, but we're quite open tonight to kind of exploring some different questions or different avenues. We originally had posted it as is science an adequate replacement for religion, because that kind of is where the topic went last night, and we thought that was quite interesting. So if you're interested in that, or you have something else you want to kind of ask, or you've been thinking about, then as always, you're welcome to kind of make your points or ask your questions. But for now, we're just sort of discussing that. Yeah, sorry, what?
Sorry, I keep thinking you're stopped.
All
Sorry,
right, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, and at the moment we were just kind of speaking about the criminal justice system, and well, here's a question for you, dude. Can pedos be rehabilitated? I'll start off with that.
Okay, that's great. Welcome to the chat, Republic of Tryhards, who says hello and has the white sort of ghost mask face. Also, my description of these things is just pitiful, isn't it? I hope you're doing well, my friend. Welcome again. It's good to see you back for some more action tonight. We've kind of kept the question the same. It is on morality, however, we are willing to branch out and kind of go for some new questions. We originally actually had the question as, is science an adequate replacement for religion, based on our kind of conversation last night, which you were part of course. We thought that was fairly interesting, and maybe we'll get a bit more into that tonight. I felt that you made some good points around that issue last time, so I'm sure you can enlighten us once again. I do hope so. Michelle, sorry, go ahead.
And yeah, I would just put that question out to you as well, Republic. Sorry, that's just as much of your name as I can remember, so we'll go with that. But yes, do you think paedophiles can be rehabilitated? Please answer me that. That's kind of what we were sort of discussing.
Yeah. Also, Republic clarifies it is the robotic open mouth smiley face. Thank you very much. Followed by a robotic tongue out face. Is that correct? Hopefully that's correct. Because I wouldn't have said that was a robot, but yeah, it looks more robotic than the second one, I guess. Yeah, I'll accept that. Okay. Dude says that English is not my first language. Rehabilitate as in getting back into society, or cured is the question back to you, it seems.
Yeah. Well, at a point that you would feel safe for them to be in society. Is that a fair enough way of saying it?
Yeah, it could well be. So that seems to be that we're talking about the former in that case, correct? You're saying they don't have to necessarily be cured, but when would you be accepting them back in society? So it's dependent upon your discretion as to when you think it's an acceptable time to reintroduce them, I suppose. Is that right?
Yeah, so basically, dude, you have to actually... Right, you've got a pedo in the same room as you, and you have to make a judgment. Is it okay to go and put them back into their house now? So you have to decide yes or no.
Going straight for the difficult questions tonight, by the way. There's going to be no shit. There's going to be no fucking about. There's just going to be straight into, tell us what you will do. And you're going to answer all these moral questions. So no one said the stream was going to be easy. You signed up for a difficult questions, and here we are. So good luck. Probably same question to Republic as well, I suppose.
You guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can answer that'd be great. And then what were we kind of speaking about just before Dude and Republic came on there? It was kind of about that where did we veer off to?
I'm not too sure. What other things were we discussing?
It was off the back of the pedo thing, but I can't really remember where. Oh, we were speaking about like virtue signaling attention.
Oh, and whether the internet has caused more of that type of behaviour. You're quite right. That is what we were discussing. Also, just see that Republic says that I'll need to think about this one for a bit. absolutely fair enough. You kind of, as I said, been put straight in the spot on the spot. So take your time and have a think. We were just discussing, as we said, has the behaviour of virtue signalling got worse since the invention of the internet? And maybe just thinking a little bit about, is it always been a problem? Where does it come from? Etc. Etc. So we'll probably discuss that a little bit as well. Also, Dude does reply here, yeah, it's a very tough question. You can never know what goes on in someone's head. That's an absolutely correct point. Absolutely. That is an issue, of course, because someone can easily verbally profess to being cured, verbally profess to not feeling certain ways, but how you can never know, as you just correctly stated. And that's a very important part of your decision then, surely. Because if you don't know, and I said this earlier, I don't see how we can take the risk. How can we take risks on that which we don't know if we're the ones who are responsible morally? And Dude also goes on to say, yes, and they can also relapse. That's exactly is the case. And I just don't understand that without 100% certainty, how you can allow... How is it as someone who's in the position, let's say, of releasing a paedophile, can we be the ones who can take the responsibility and say, yes, I'm okay to take the risk of letting them back into society? So that when, let's say, hypothetically, there's a second victim, how are we not, how are we admonished of any responsibility then? How can we be the ones to say, I'm willing to gamble with that second potential victim's well-being, their security, their life. Yeah, I'm willing to gamble their life in my hands and say, yeah, it's only like I think it's maybe like a 10% chance that they'll relapse. So I'm willing to roll the dice with these people's life, where the person's going back into the community. I don't see how anyone has the right to do that.
I know, it's only a child's corrupted soul, so it's not.
It's only a child's whole life wasted. Yeah, I can gamble that. Yeah, I don't get it. I personally haven't seen. I personally don't understand how that can be someone's right to make that choice.
No, it's not, because again, it's just not about them, is it? It's not like they're going to be the ones that's made the victim.
Correct, and this ties nicely back into what we were talking about, which was virtue signalling, in which we were making the point that it's very much easy to sound good and to say what sounds good, etc., etc., if you're not the one who will suffer the consequences. And this is an important point that we need to all be aware of, that yes, people can say good things and nice things if they don't have to actually face the reality of the consequences of what they're saying. It's very easy. I can say all sorts of things. I can be really, really great and perfect if I never actually have to do anything, if it won't affect me, I can think whatever I want. And it's a real problem, because without a basement in reality, without some, reality pushing back against your ideology, your ideals, there's nothing to counter. There's nothing to push it back the other way, and ideas can get out of control. And hence, what I think we're seeing with this behaviour today.
Especially
that makes sense. I hope that made sense.
What was that?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense to you. Okay, great.
I had something to say, but I've forgotten it. I'm so bad at that. Sorry.
It's okay, because right when you said that, Dude has come in the perfect timing with our response. So it's just fortuitous stuff tonight. Let's see. If I may suggest something, what do you guys think about this one? And this is a quote. We are not disturbed by what happens to us, but by our thoughts about what happens to us. Michelle?
I would say incorrect. But I can see where it would be correct. But I think if it's like in regards to something like a paedophile, like if you've been raped by a man when you're a child, like that, the actual event will have disturbed you. It's not just your thoughts about it afterwards. Because in the present moment of that happening, you're gonna be. Am I getting that right? Could you just read that out again?
Yeah, I can read that. The quote was, "We are not disturbed by what happens to us, but by our thoughts about what happens to us."
Yeah, no, I think we are disturbed by what happens, but then further tortured by thinking about it.
I think I understand where Dude is coming from, but I also agree with
Mhm.
you as well. I think it's circumstantial, but I think
Yeah.
typically if we're not talking about some extreme thing that's happened to you, then I can understand where Dude is looking at it as in your perspective is very much important in terms of how you will experience life. And I do appreciate where you're coming from, and that's very important in many aspects. It's kind of similar to the idea that someone doesn't make you angry, you are angered, by them. They can't make
Yes.
you. If you don't wish to be angered angry at them, and you just laugh at them instead. You see, it was the same input. It was the same
Yeah.
stimuli.
But
Probably
it's
the
the
right
way
word.
you react to
It's
it,
the way
isn't it?
you react to it, and that's up to you. So I think that's what Dude's going for. But I also see what you're saying in terms of something extremely volatile that's happened to you. Well, you have no choice about what you think. It is necessarily disturbing in its nature. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
and I
yeah,
agree as
okay.
well. I do actually understand the point. It also reminded me of I don't know if you guys have seen Peep Show. Um Bloody hilarious. But they uh what are their names? Fucking the two guys in it have made a new show. Can you remember what that's called, David?
Mm, I can't remember. I think it's like a one-word
No,
name.
yeah.
Can't remember.
Well, anyway,
I can actually
they've
look it
made a
up,
new.
but it's not that important, is it? Or maybe it is.
No, no, no. I was just referencing the show, but in it, like it's the two boys' perspectives. So David Mitchell, who's like more of a kind of negative, pessimistic soul, and then Jeremy, that's whatever fucking his name is, um, who sees things through a kind of brighter lens, and it goes back to their childhood, and it like plays it from their view of their childhood, and like his is all grey, like the more pessimistic one, and like all lonely and stuff, and then it's the same, like it'll be the actual same event or something, and then he's viewing it as all, oh, there's cake, and it's just so funny because they're different
Right.
characters, the way
Yeah.
they
That
remember their
series is
past, and it's
called Back, by the way, if anyone's interested.
bad.
Back. I thought it was a
Yeah,
one-word name. I just completely forgot what the word was, but it's called Back. I don't know how if it's still running. I think it's probably not still running now, but we've only watched the first season. But it's quite funny in what you're describing. The way it's totally the reverse opposite the way they're seeing events, and it kind of ties into what Dude was saying. I think there with perspective
yeah,
being
because it's the same
important.
event that they're recalling.
Yeah.
It's a funny scene.
Also, welcome to the chat, Blink BTW, who I see you've reverted your name back from Michael Murder to Blink BTW. So a little
Yay,
change back.
hello.
And Michelle's a big Blink 182 fan, so I'm thinking she'll actually favour this name change.
I do,
You
I
do.
do.
The topic of discussion tonight, well, excuse me, we were kind of asking originally, is science an adequate replacement for religion? Because that's kind of where last night's conversation went to eventually. I changed the title back to the same one as Where Does Morality Come From? Because it seemed to garner quite a lot of interest, and we were sitting for a little bit there, and no one was in the chat, and we thought, oh, okay, maybe we'll change it back, and we'll see where we go from there. So that is the main question still, but we've kind of veered off now into a couple different topics. Virtue signaling, moral decision making and tough decisions. That sort of it seems to be the other one. Was that it? That was the kind of main two we looked at just now.
Yep,
Uh,
maybe I can pose my hard question for Blink, by the way.
you could do the same. I'll just run through a little bit of these first of all because I definitely don't want to get to the point
Okay.
where I'm speaking like a million miles per minute trying to do all the chat. I just see that
Sorry,
Jay
I don't know.
Moshe
It's
is
because I
also
can't see
here.
them, so it's hard to keep track of who's speaking. Sorry.
Jay Moshe is also here and says hello all. Hello Jay Moshe, good to see you, my friend. Hope you're doing well this evening. Same to you. I don't know if I said that as well, Blink, but hope you're doing well also, of course. Papa Gobsec is here. Welcome back, Mr. Gobsec. Well, and by the way, I saw that you clipped, and I didn't even know clips were a thing. But I was scrolling through our channel trying to change a few of the panels and things, and you clipped that little thing of me saying Papa Gabsack or something. something. So I like that one. That was funny. There's a little clip of me saying his name completely wrong. So Gobsec, I've got it down tonight. My tongue's working more proficiently, and there'll be no more mistakes of that nature. Probably will once my brain starts to wear down. But anyway, Dude says yeah, and says I'm not too sure about it either. I can see it works in some things, but I also guess that many of our thoughts about events are unconscious / habitual.
Yeah,
You think that's
definitely habitual.
kind of what we were saying, that it's maybe not always the case. I think it's a very important point, as we said, in cases where you do have a choice. So if there is a potential for you to act, to react a different way than what maybe comes natural. Like say someone is annoying you, and naturally you feel the building up of anger. You want to hit them. You want to do all these things. Maybe it's useful in that sense where you say, okay, there is a potential for me to not act the way that I want to react, and maybe that's where it's useful. But in some cases, I think if the action is just so heinous and so just disturbing by its nature, then perhaps that quote doesn't really apply in those sort of situations. So I think it depends on what exactly is the stimuli that you're talking about. Yeah, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. Yeah.
I think we all agree there.
Yeah. Okay, doke. That's cool. Also, so then Dude says the quote ties into, and here's another. This is quote, open quote. Physical hardships are not intolerable by nature. The Spartans, for instance, gladly submit to being whipped because they are taught that it is done for good reason. Michelle?
What?
So that's to say that you can struggle and go through strenuous activity, but if you have a higher purpose for that, or there's a reasoning behind it, then you can see it as a good thing rather than necessarily a bad. Welcome, Speedy Boat. Speedy Boat. Speedy Boot is now following. Thank you very much for the follow, my friend. Welcome to our channel. Get ready to get tucked into some interesting conversation tonight. I hope you're ready. So I think what Dude is saying is that that's again about the perspective. If someone might think, well, hard physical exercise and lifting things and running and things is strenuous and it hurts. So why would I like that? It's not enjoyable. But if you have this goal or this perception of that makes me stronger, it makes me more fit, it makes me ready to take on the world. I build muscle, I lose fat, etc., etc. Then what is considered strenuous by one person is taken as a good thing by the other person who sees the kind of end goal or kind of sees it in a different light, if that makes sense. I think that's what Dude's saying. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and that ties in, as he says, to the original again. It's about how we view the activity, how we view the stimuli, rather than what the stimuli necessarily is on its own.
Yeah. I didn't realise that about the Spartans, though. If that's correct, that's pretty interesting.
I think the Spartans, they were really big on military, and like they used to train, they used to train children from a really young age in combat and that sort of thing. If I'm right, I hope that's right. So I think they were right into kind of being very tough and military focused.
But why did they think it was good? Was like the whipping like a punishment, so that like within the army it was kind of like, okay, I know I've stepped out of line, so I accept the punishment. Is that kind of what we're talking about?
It could well be that, and it could also just be a general just toughen you, just to toughen you up and make you stronger and resilient and that sort of thing. I mean, which is kind of similar to the army side, yeah.
And kind of like the people that what is it? They kind of like batter their shins and stuff so that they're strong, and their balls. Right. Who's that?
The Shaolin monk, where they take sticks and whack each other's balls, and they, put spears in their neck and this sort of behaviour, which again, to the average person is an absolute no. Like, no one's just going to say, oh yeah, okay, that sounds nice. And so again, it's that the activity itself is not what dictates whether it's good or kind of good or bad. It's how we're viewing it, how we're seeing what is the purpose of the activity, I suppose, in a way, kind of affects it. But I think that was the Shaolin monks, and there's videos of that sort of carry on. I wouldn't subscribe myself personally, but I get it. I'm just happy that they're willing to do it, and I'll just steer clear of any ball hitting with sticks. I don't know. I don't know how much you can toughen necessarily physically that area anyway, but I guess it's more the mental side as well of just being like able to take it is maybe more important. I don't know. Anyway, and also Dude says this is from Epictetus, by the way, Stoicism. Oh yeah, and you said you were quite a proponent of Stoicism last time, Dude. In fact, I think it was you I said to maybe check out Diogenes, but I don't know if you had a chance to look that up at all. I think it was you that recommended that last night, because he has many funny stories surrounding him and all his kind of carry on. But yeah, I appreciate the kind of philosophical outlook on it. Really interesting stuff, so thanks for that. Blink says, I'm doing wonderful. Thank you, guys. You're more than welcome. It's good to hear you're doing well. It's good to hear you're getting on okay. And Papa Gobsick says, hey, it's no worries, dude. It was good gaff. Well, yeah, it was funny. And I didn't even know I didn't know what a clip was. We're not really, we're kind of new to obviously all the things you can do in Twitch, and we're just sort of slowly building it and learning as we go, sort of thing. Which is helpful when you guys tell us what we can do to improve or how we can do certain things in the stream. Obviously, if you know more about it, it is really handy to get your input on that sort of stuff as well. But yeah, I didn't know what a clip was. I was just scrolling through our channel trying to change a few things, and I just saw, what's this thing here? And it was me, yeah, just saying, I don't even know what I said, Papa Gabsmack or whatever. I probably just have to call you Papa Gabsmack or whatever I said now. I think I'll be good. I'll just stick to it. And then, yeah, then Speedy Boot says, hi, hello, Speedy Boot. Yeah, you'll see we're having a conversation that sort of started on the question of morality. But you're more than welcome to kind of chime in with anything you're thinking just now, or any questions you have, that sort of thing. Then just feel free to sort of join in. If not, just sit back and enjoy the conversation. Just sit back and relax. Blink says perspective for sure, by the way, as well. So I think we're all on board with the kind of perspective is a very important part of how we experience life. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's huge, isn't it?
Definitely a huge part of it. Yeah. Dude says, no, it's not a punishment. Training, yeah, becoming tougher. Yeah. So it's just generally to make them more resilient. They get whipped to become more resilient, more strong, able to take the pain and the punishment. So when they face that on, I guess, the battlefield, they're ready. They're ready to face that and face danger, sort of thing.
Right, okay.
So now we've got a little bit of a comment here from Republic. I think this is in response to your question, actually. So Republic's had some time to think, and this is the response here. So, I believe that some people are beyond rehabilitation and will never be fit to re-enter society. Child sex abuse is hugely detrimental to their psychological development, who in most cases mature to become abusive citizens themselves, at the detriment of society. Therefore, people committing paedophilic abuse shouldn't be brought back to society. Michelle?
Perfect. Thank you so much for that answer. It was well thought out. I'm glad you take your time to consider all these questions. That's really good. Well, I would agree actually with all of that. I was actually wondering if I kind of had a follow-up question, if that's okay. What then is the option if you think we can't be letting them back into society?
Okay.
Is it just house them?
What do we do?
That kind of thing. And if anyone else wants to answer that question, it was just, what was the bloody question?
At what stage do you feel comfortable letting paedophiles back into society? I think that's what you settled on, or something along those lines. Is that right?
Yeah, and basically it's all on you. So you've got full responsibility here, everyone that's in this chat who have not already asked yet. And you've got to make the decision about this paedophile, for example. So it's on your head if they reoffend. So please answer.
Okay, Rocket, there you go. The question has been put out there. Republic's taken a go and has been asked a follow-up question as well. So, and everyone else is welcome to answer or not, depending on what they want to do. Dude says, yeah, I checked out Diogenes' funny stories. Right, I know. I like many ways of his thinking, but he's a bit too much of an animal for my style. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he did all sorts. I think he was having like wanks in the street and turning up at dinners and shitting all over the table and quite a lot of. Yeah, he really didn't give a fuck, like, to the extreme sort of thing. So he was really like extreme cynicism, yeah.
And he wasn't like arrested or anything, or what?
I don't know. Like, I guess he's just a kind of ornament of the state, sort of like a fun.
And he wasn't killed either. So they killed Socrates, but not someone shitting and wanking.
No, apparently they just put up with him. He was just a bit of fun, I suppose.
That shows you where things have always been, doesn't it? We'll kill someone that speaks really well and speaks the truth, but you can shit and wank all over the place, you're fine.
Yeah. Yeah, but they called him Diogenes the dog because of these behaviours, because of the way he acted. That's how he got that nickname, yeah. I don't know. Funny stuff, funny stuff. I mean, as dude says, I agree with a lot of the thing. Agree with a lot of what he's doing. It's just that again, maybe he thinks it takes it a little bit too far. But each to their own, isn't it?
That's a lot too far.
A lot too far. Yeah.
I mean, sleeping in a barrel's one thing, but then
Yeah.
you're starting to get in other people's lives. I don't understand.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he just thought these like preconceptions of what's right and wrong. Like, why shouldn't you just wank on the street? I guess was his, question. You never want to do it. Then what's the problem, sort of thing.
That one I can see more, but shitting on a table when someone else
Well, I
does
think that happened. Maybe I'm misremembering that, but he went to some kind of dinner and he certainly did some sort of capers, like maybe pissing everywhere or something like this. And he definitely was up to some funny stuff. Maybe I'll try to read some of it
He's really
or
testing
or find some
waters,
of it
isn't he?
at some point. We'll try maybe go over his stuff maybe one time. Could be quite good. Jane
Yeah.
Moshi says, I said Papa Gosback. Yeah, Papa Gosback. So I think I'll stick with that as your name, Papa Gosback. Yeah. Nah, it might be offensive. Maybe I should just go with it. Gobsec, Gosback. It's kind of close. Is it? Maybe not. Okay. Um. So yeah, dude says that he was arrested for wanking on the street. Yeah, apparently.
Oh, yeah, good to hear.
Yeah, it was interesting. They didn't kill him in those times. I guess they were pretty civil about things in some ways.
Hmm.
So there you go.
Well,
Well, I'm
yeah.
sure that like in some sense they probably like the average person just thought he was mentally disturbed, right?
Well, he probably was. By the sound of it.
Um, maybe yeah, maybe we all are in just different degrees. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
But I understand. Yeah, it's quite extreme. I think that was actually their outlook back then was more with people who were sort of maybe like acting out of like the norm. Maybe they were some people like they're speaking fast or in tongues and that type of stuff. They would just say that they're touched by God. And they say don't disturb them. Don't you don't want to punish them or disturb them or do anything. They're special, sort of. They're touched by God, and
Right.
I think that was the attitude towards people who we might call like crazy, like now, or mentally ill or something. They would just say touched by God, and that you should just leave them be, sort of thing.
God, what a fun time.
Well, yeah, but it's still quite a compassionate way of approaching it, though, isn't it?
It is, but I would not be putting up with that if it was happening.
Yeah, again, it depends, I suppose, on to what level it goes. Yeah, and certainly I wouldn't want my table covered with shite or piss
No.
or whatever else, whatever other fluids.
I don't care who you're touched by. Like, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. It's that was I guess they just kind of let him get on with it and just sort of let him get to it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
But interesting guy, sort of considered one of the early like cynicists. He would also do things like I remember reading that he was going out with a lamp like in the middle of the day, and saying that he was looking for a wise man.
Do you know what I actually thought you meant there?
Oh,
I thought
yeah.
you meant like going out with a lamp, like these people that date the cars and roller
Oh
coasters.
no, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be that
Oh my god,
surprised. I
that's
suppose,
the
yeah.
origins. But...
No, as in like he was holding a lamp and going about like this and saying he was looking for a wise man.
Right.
So
Okay.
he was making a kind of
That's fun.
statement, I suppose. Yeah, as in there's none.
Yep.
Right.
Interesting, man. Yeah.
Definitely interesting. Definitely good. It's good reading stuff. Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know how much I'd like it firsthand, depending on what was going on, but definitely some interesting stuff to read about.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude says something like that, and stating he couldn't find one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he just saying he couldn't find a wise man.
Well, I imagine that was true.
Well, I imagine things haven't much changed in that sense, but that's what I was finding interested. Why is anyone wiser? Isn't it strange that we even had this? We have like a small percentage of people that can be blessed with wisdom, have thoughts, and think. What's kind of the point of that? Why isn't everyone just kind of able to get along, accept the preconceptions, and just sort of fit in? Why do you think there even is this kind of like certain people that are outliers in some sense?
It honestly baffles me. I really don't know. Like, I wonder if it was like an anomaly, and then has it just been genetically passed on since then, but not spread, like, and it's still kind of just been a few, but I really don't know. I've no idea.
Yeah. Because it seems like in a
What do
kind
you?
of experimental state to be in, as in, like, is it actually beneficial for survival to be wise? And it's certainly not obvious. It's not like provable to most people as to why you want to think about things, is it? Because it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily help you get along any better, or get more things, get more material things, that sort of thing, does it?
No, it definitely that gives you more misery.
Or, well, potentially it does. Yeah, potentially it does. I mean, many
Yeah.
people who are
Well, I think it
great
has
thinkers
to,
have
like,
been
even if
depressed,
you
or
overcome the misery.
yeah,
Sorry.
or pessimistic. I mean, we were talking about Schopenhauer, or not on the stream, weren't we? But we were talking about Schopenhauer, who wrote a book, or wrote a whatever it was, on a thing called Studies in Pessimism. And his
Mm-hmm.
whole outlook was pretty bleak on the whole thing. So, but then there is quite a lot of solace to be taken from even listening to that perspective as well. It can actually be quite a good thing to listen to, just to hear someone who speaks about things
Yeah.
in that way. So it's kind of interesting.
But I think that anyone who has wisdom, um, whether they've overcome their misery or not, they've definitely gone through it. I don't think you can be wise without having experienced misery.
Mm. Well, okay, let's say that. Let's pose that question just out. Can you be wise without having suffered some miserable state of being prior, or at some point in your life? That's a question I'm going to form based on what you just said.
All
Let's
right.
ask that out there. Now, the Republic, I think, who's coming back again, just continuing on what was being said earlier, with you asking the question of what should we do then with paedophiles,
Oh,
this is,
perfect.
yeah, says, my first reaction was life in prison, but I've heard about how child rapists all end up getting tormented, if not dying on the hands of the other prisoners anyway. So I'm going to say capital punishment then, to save up from cleaning up a big mess later on. Yeah.
That's a great answer. Well, before I think anyone came on the chat, that's what me and David were speaking about, and we've spoken about it a lot actually. I just find it really interesting because we would agree. Because when we take it back to thinking about in tribal times, so let's say there's like, 20 of you to 100 or something, I don't know, and someone like rapes one of the children in your family, in your tribe. We were just saying how ridiculous it is, um, to think that you would keep someone like in a cage and go and bring food to them who had done that to your family. And again, things would be a lot more connected then. That would actually be everyone's little sister or niece, or
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and it seems that people find it hard to kind of see the similarities between, or see how that's the same, but it's just a bigger scale now, and there seems to be a lot of confusion when we take it from that small scale out to what it is now, and it's, oh well, that's no one's fucking daughter, so no one really cares, and it's easy enough to say, oh, I wouldn't kill someone. So we think that's why these people are kept in prison or mental hospitals or whatever. But me and David think the same as you, actually, Republic. That it just saves resources and makes sense to kill them.
Yeah,
And
well, at
I
least I
also
haven't
think
been
it's the most
convinced of.
compassionate.
I haven't been convinced of the opposite, and that's my position at the moment. So,
Right, okay. But I also think it's the compassionate option, and I think that's kind of maybe what you're saying, Republic, like, because, well, they are going to be tormented and stuff as well, so even if you're coming from a compassionate standpoint, I also think that's the answer.
yeah,
So
compassionate
yeah, what?
standpoints and empathy are a luxury that are afforded only by the fact that it won't affect us personally, or won't affect someone in our family, isn't it? You know,
Yeah,
as we were saying before you came on, we were just saying it's very easy to do that. It's very easy to be empathetic and be compassionate and all these sort of wonderful things when it doesn't affect you personally, or doesn't affect someone you know.
yeah, exactly.
And since the even the person now, like, down the street from you, even that has changed. Like, they're not really your they're not your brethren. They're not your. You don't care like what your neighbor 5 doors down does. You probably don't even know them. I don't know them. Like
I don't know anybody ever. I know across the
yeah,
road,
it's
and
not a
that's it.
community, is it? So the communities used to form, I think, a natural kind of protection against this type of thing happening. Whereas now that
Yeah, yeah,
isn't a thing. Everything's so individualized and then so abstracted that this is where the problems start to come in with these types of questions, and people don't see it in the same straightforward way. They see it in many layers and abstraction, and then they want to sound good, so they're concerned about that instead of what is actually the best thing to do. What is the truth? And that should be our concern.
yeah.
It shouldn't just
And it
be what
sounds
sounds
bad,
nice.
obviously. I think that's what people get put off by. Obviously, it doesn't sound good to say, yes, I would just kill them, but.
Yeah, the thing
Or
is, I'm not going
to
to
kill
say
them
I
at all.
take great delight. It just seems to me something that needs to be done. The purging of evil from the world seems to be in the interest of those of us who are good, and I just can't see how it's not.
Yep.
And I'm
Yeah,
open to hear the arguments against that, but I just haven't so far been convinced. And maybe this will offer the opportunity for those arguments to be brought forward by anyone in the chat who doesn't agree with what's being said right now. You're welcome to say something about it and to bring something forward. There won't be any hostility towards what you say, or it won't be a problem if you think something. But so far as I can reason, it seems that we should, be doing what the three of us so far have concluded on that matter.
Yep. I think it makes sense in matters of risk, resources.
Right. We were saying, because and some people may say it as too reductionist for them, but I like to do reducing down to simpler points because it's good to start from a base foundation, a smaller point, and then to bring it forward from there. And we were saying if you were in a community of 20 people and you were the leader, or even just say you were part of the community, it doesn't matter too much if you're the leader or not, but let's just say you could be the leader of this tribe, community of people, 20 people, and someone had raped a child within the tribe. I think it wouldn't even cross. I mean, it wouldn't even cross your mind and would seem ludicrous as a suggestion if someone brought the point and said, "Well, I don't know. Let's not get rid of them or kill them or do anything like that. Let's just keep them in a sheltered area, bring them food and water each day, and just make them stay there, and they can just sit there instead." Because at that point, they have to take food, resources, water, shelter, clothes, etc., from everyone else in the community. There's 20 person communities, take it away from their stash. And at that point it's really obvious to the people that they're losing resources to this person who has basically corrupted the agreement of the community, has defiled the agreements of the security and the respect and the safety shown to each other in the community. So they've destroyed the rules, but yet
They're
they're
getting
still going to
rewarded.
be, in some ways rewarded, or in the sense that they don't have to participate in the hunt or participate in the gathering of the resources, but they'll still be the beneficiary of the food, the shelter, the clothes, etc. Seems to me fairly ludicrous when you put it in that scenario. And
Yeah, are you going to go build them a fire each night beside them to keep them warm? I mean,
yeah, and
it's
are you
bizarre.
going to do that? I mean, it's fine because we let the government handle it, we let someone else handle it, the psychologists handle it, the whoever else handle all this. But if you were the one that actually had to bring them the food and build them the things and look after them and all this, would you? And would it seem right? Would it seem just to anyone when I ask that question and post that kind of hypothetical scenario? Does it seem right to anyone just thinking on it that that would be what would come to mind to do? Because for me personally, what comes to mind just instantly is exile or death. Those seem the
We
only
also
two
have.
options that are available.
Yeah, exile as well. I was also going to say we really should be thinking about the child as well, because that child then has not only been corrupted by this monster, but then they have to be aware that they're just over there and getting food and clothes and heat brought to them.
Right.
And they could somehow get out of this cage or wherever they've been built or whatever. I mean, maybe if it seems like really impossible, but they still could, and that child then has to worry that they're still there.
Yes.
Um, that's well, I think we should be thinking more about the person who actually is the victim than our own. Oh, I don't want to kill them. It's like, well, maybe
Right.
it's not about
Yes.
you, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. And that's me. You don't have to take delight in killing them, as I was saying earlier. It's not like you have to enjoy the process of doing that, but it seems like it's what has to be done in the sense of the perspective of justice.
Yeah.
And when
And
you
because,
said,
like,
you know,
yeah,
it
you don't want
illuminates
that
it further by talking about
continuing
it
on.
from the victim's perspective and saying, how is justice being served for them? How can they feel that's been served?
Yeah, and it's over, like, they can relax, they can sleep, like, it's not gonna happen again. At least by them, you
Yeah.
know.
I think that, again, a lot of these things aren't discussed because it just doesn't sound nice, and people don't want to talk about hard and horrible sounding like questions, and that's the problem, isn't it? And
Yeah,
as you
and
sort
my
of you said, it's
favourite...
like, oh, I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to talk about that. Well, it's that's you're appropriating your like discussing it versus what's actually happened to a child. Those are not comparable. They're not even on the same level whatsoever.
Yeah, and you avoiding it doesn't mean that less children will be raped,
Right.
so...
So, but as they say, ignorance is bliss. So this is what's performed, and again, we are blessed. If you, well, not blessed really, but seemingly bestowed with the luxury of just ignoring certain things and thinking what we will on things without being tested and pushed on them to see what we think is true. It's simply not in the
Yeah.
purview of most people to work out whether or not something is true or not. It probably suits them better. If it sounds nice, I can go with that. It makes sense. It sounds nice, etc., etc. But that's clearly damaging in reality.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
I
Is
feel like we're kind of
anyone...
like babbling on, but the chat sort of dissipated. I don't know. Maybe it
Yeah,
got
maybe
too
the questions
serious
took
tonight
over.
for people. I don't know on that question. Oh well, Republic has answered. So we have Republic still chatting. Maybe everyone's thinking on it. I don't know, or just sort of taking that in and having a thought on it. But I'll read what Republic said
Right.
anyway. Yeah, how we've become individualized atoms in today's age when we share hobbies, ideologies, gender pronouns with other people instead of land, history, genes results in this not my problem rat race life.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a fucking banging point. You're making such good points. Thank you so much for finding this stream and joining in. It's been really good.
It's
Um,
absolutely just by luck, isn't it? We can find some people that want to discuss. It's so enjoyable. That we get everyone on here that just like brings forward these points and makes these great points. So it's just great.
it is like after last night's chat, I was actually like so buzzing. Basically, is the word. And I just thought, oh, that's so good. Like I had so many points where it's like, oh, I've never thought about that before. Like, and I love thinking, oh, I've never thought about that before. It's such a nice feeling. So,
Yeah,
thank
it
you.
activates your mind again, doesn't it? It just activates and you get to hear some new points and or someone else's perspective. It really is illuminating.
Yeah, learn some more. It's really good.
Yeah.
And I really do think. What was the last bit before Rat Race said no?
Before it said that we individualize and we share hobbies, ideologies, and gender pronouns rather than land, history, genes.
No, sorry, I meant just before the Rat Race.
That is just before that. Well,
Right.
literally before it says results in this not my problem rat race life.
Yeah, sorry, that's the bit I meant. Yeah, that's exactly it. I think it really reeks of not my problem because things are too big and
Right.
I mean it's understandable in a sense because people are so busy and hounded down with all their own problems. But when you never take the time to consider things that well, if it's not your problem, then is it anyone's problem? And who's dealing with the problem is what you need to be thinking about. Like, if you're palming it off, then there's sure as hell there's going to be like 100 other people palming it off.
And I think they call that the diffusion of responsibility, or at least in like smaller studies that are carried out, even on a lesser scale in the whole world or the whole of a country. But
Yeah,
if there's something heinous going on and there's several people, then they're actually less likely for one of them to step in and do something. Apparently, that's the case. Is that
yeah,
right?
like the bystander effect kind of
Is
thing.
that what it's called? Yeah. So the bystander effect, where you won't do it because you think, oh, someone else will do it, someone else will call. So
Yeah,
taking personal responsibility and taking accountability, these are diminished values, or just naturally diminishing due to the scale of things, I think, and the anonymous
I think it is natural. Yeah, it actually is natural.
It's a natural occurrence, it seems, or a psychological occurrence. Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't know that. I think it seems like that could be true. I don't think it's like people are trying to do that. Like, because if I was trying to put myself in the imagined scenario of like an emergency going on and it was only me, obviously I'd just be right at it. But if there's other people, you'd be like, well, someone might know better than me, so you're kind of, and I don't know what I'm doing. So, but if you're the only one there who doesn't know what you're doing, you're just going to do it. But if there's other
Right.
people, you're
Right.
going to kind of be like, well, I'm useless, so who else is going to step in? So I
Yes.
think it might be natural, yeah.
And so it's understandable in
What
some
What
way.
do you think?
Um, yeah, it's understandable in some way that happens. If someone doesn't think they're as capable as someone else, I can understand that. Like, say there was like two guys fighting, and say your average woman's not going to be the one who's going to interact because they're going to think, oh, someone else who's like stronger or better fighting is going to interact and do better than me. So why should I get in there and get hurt, sort of thing.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
it's a
exactly.
risk analysis that we sort of do. We all do as well. Though, like
Hmm.
what's my risk and what's the outcome and likely outcome. So we're sort of doing that in real time. I think when you come across these kind of situations, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because if in that situation where there's emergency and um you go and give CPR to someone, but there's loads of people around, then that is totally on you if you fuck it up, and it would that would feel worse than like if it was just only you there and you tried your best at CPR, that'd be like fine. But if you fucked up and there was loads of other people there that could have stepped in, but you've almost kind of said, well, I know what I'm doing, I'll go do CPR. Even I don't know. I think that's kind of maybe the thought process that would
Hmm.
go along with those situations, and
Yeah.
maybe that's why these things
Sure.
happen.
Dude also says, what about killing their sex drive through chemical castration or something?
Hmm. That's a good point.
I don't
Um,
know. Is there conclusive evidence that chemical castration ceases that behavior? I'm not so sure that there is, unless you can show me. I think if that was absolutely stunted them and made it impossible, um, then of course that could be worth discussing. But I think even regardless of sex drive, is this not a real mental disorder in the sense that they can still stimulate their brain and they still wish to stimulate it? It's almost like a possibly like an authority type thing, like a kind of power thing as well as sexual. Is that true? Do you know what I'm
well,
saying?
it
Maybe
seems.
it's not necessarily just something that's controlled by the sex drive or sex hormones or chemicals, that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I think at least like I mean, all people still don't want to be lonely and want company. And if you were looking at, I know we've discussed pedophiles in quite a bit, and we've kind of spoken about like there may be some that have kind of potentially got to this stage because they've like never had any women interests, for example, um, and so they've kind of gone down to like where they can get it, and then that's a child. They abuse a child. Um, but they would still like if that was the case, they're still seeking like company and stuff like this, um, which they could still get from the child, and then yeah, they can look cool to the child because well they've got a car, the child, so the child looks up to them, so they're still getting this like good sort of love and attention kind of thing, which yeah, it doesn't seem to be all sexual. So I don't, yeah, I'm not sure.
That's a good point. Yes, maybe it's not entirely going to be driven by that, and that's why it doesn't necessarily guarantee a cessation of the behaviour. Yeah. I think what we'll do is sort of wrap up just now. Things have been fairly quiet actually. It seemed like everyone came in and then it kind of just died down. Maybe the paedophile discussion was just again too serious or too much for people. I don't really know. I don't know what happened, but okay. Republic stuck around and
Well, I'm
dudes
sorry.
here, so they're willing to discuss these kind of difficult questions. So I appreciate your input on this, guys. Really is good of you to stick around and show your support, because otherwise it's just us sitting here trying to work out these things ourselves. So it is good to see you again and good to see this input. But we'll sort of wind things up for the night. We've been doing about an hour 20 here, so we'll cut it off there. We will be back again tomorrow night as always, 8 p.m. You know the time, you know what's going on. So if you're free, you're more than welcome again to come along. And please do, as I said this before, but put suggestions in the suggestion box or join us on the Discord and you can put suggestions for questions you might have or points you want to say for like the next stream, because we're always interested in hearing some good questions or having some new conversation, new discussions. So, and you guys clearly have a lot of interesting thoughts to share with us. So we can only do so much in one night, obviously, but if you've got suggestions for the next one, that would be good. Now, actually, I see there's actually one. I'll read this last larger comment from Republic then, and then we'll sort of cut it there. Don't want to leave this one hanging because there's obviously an input here. So Republic says,
definitely not.
When a country has peoples that have no ties to the land, it results in the decay of the social fabric. Trust goes down, and people generally only give a shit about their own. I think this causes the weird virtue signaling bullshit of pedos are just an orientation like homosexuality, because the ones spouting this are viewing it from their atomized view of their world instead of tribal. All I have to say. Michelle?
Just such good comments every time.
Yeah. It's an excellently well thought out point. Yeah, it's just very, very well worded points that you've made. You've got certainly a way with words, Republic. So, yes, I do. I think the point you made is very interesting. That you think the ties, the way that people tie themselves together and connect, are established on different grounds, on different criteria, and I think that's an excellent point, and very much is the case. As you put it, they're kind of finding these other somewhat more superficial criteria for deciding if they should be friendly to someone or not, basically, or decide someone is hostile or friendly to them. They're basing it on this very superficial, very artificial criteria in a lot of cases, and that clearly isn't as well based in reality and based in something real and tying as before, and that may be what causes these problems, as you then go on to say. I think that's just an excellent point, very, very interesting.
Yeah, it is. And also I was thinking that you said something about something oh god, I can't actually remember, but something to do with people caring about others. I can't actually get what it was, but it should make sense when I say this. I think the problem is we're kind of expected to care for quite a lot of people. Not care, but like have a lot of time. I don't think it's actually possible. I think we really are meant to be in small groups. It seems to me when we speak about a lot of these things that a lot of problems seem to come with the size of things, and it's just as if our brains aren't made to cope with these big numbers. And a lot of people, I feel like we're meant to be in small groups where we can actually care and build trust and a community. And when it goes out of that, it's like everything just gets thrown off balance, it seems.
Yeah.
I hope that made sense.
That's a great point, and yeah, maybe you guys can think about that. We'll bring it for the next one. We will type things here. Republic says, thanks for the hard questions. You're more than welcome, my friend. Thank you for the great responses tonight. Dude also says, cheers guys, good night as well. Thank you very much, dude. Again, really appreciate you guys' support coming on consistently. It's really nice to see. We do hope we're giving you some sort of value here. We hope that these conversations bring something valuable to you as well and that you're enjoying it. And I hope you'll be free in the next coming days. As you know, we'll be on every night. We'll try to be as consistent as we can. And yeah, thanks very much again. Really appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, guys. That was a really good chat.
Okay, have a good night. Cheers for now.